One of the reasons I think I'm on this program right now is because I'm a great example of someone who knew nothing about real estate investing, nothing about that subject, and went through that 6-step process and continue to use it today and to build on our real estate investments.
So I'd like to acknowledge Kim because I had done many, many deals in property, made a lot of mistakes. Like a big mistake is selling some of my investments when I should have hung on to them. But nonetheless, that's how we learn. So when I met Kim, I said, okay, it's time we start investing. And the first thing we did, we started putting some money aside so we had some down payment. And the reason I mention that is too many people come to the real estate market and they don't have any money to put down. If you don't have money to put down, and it is possible to find a nothing down deal, it is possible to find a foreclosure. But the reality is if you cannot manage your money well, you shouldn't buy investment property because if you can't manage your personal finances, you really cannot manage a property. So the first thing we had to do as a couple was really budget and manage our money well, setting money aside so we could afford a down payment. One of the things I mentioned earlier is we had bought a home in Oregon in a place called Eastmoreland, which was the high-end rich neighborhood, and right down the street was the sister town, a place I could jog to, called Westmoreland. It was such a cute little neighborhood. So when I said that to Kim, I said, okay, it's time to learn how to invest. And I started just jogging that neighborhood because I listened to my own advice. Don't invest too far away. So you could walk to the property.
Yes, so that's true. Number one, we decided to be investors. And number two, we looked for the area. And I remember you'd say, I'm going to go out for a run every day. And you'd come back and you'd tell me what you were learning about this area called Westmoreland. And you jogged it, and I drove it, and I walked it, and we began seeing what was happening in the area, looking at what houses were for sale, what the prices were, what was up and coming, what was being renovated, and we learned a lot about that one area.
And you talked to some of the agents in the area who were experts.
Exactly. I called brokers. I looked for their signs because I'd never spoken with brokers and started asking them questions about the area. What did they know? What would rents going for? And I remember one day coming back, you came back from your run, and you said, there's this house. I think this might be our deal.
And I could tell you what happened was I used to jog past this one house, and the first time I ran by it, I believe they were asking like $56,000 for it. And so next time I jogged by it, I saw this couple out front, and I waved at them, and I talked to them. I just got to know them a bit. And I said, it's a nice house, and we live in Eastmoreland and all this. And they never suspected I was an investor. And I kept jogging by it, and then one day I saw the price was reduced sign on it. I went, huh. So next time I jogged by it, they happened to be coming out again, and I asked them, I said, why is the price coming down? They said, because we bought a new house. We have to sell this house. If we don't sell this house, we don't get to buy the new house. The bank won't let us have two houses. So at that point, I said to them, real simple question, what will you take? And they were willing to take $46,000, which made it a very smoking, red-hot deal. The point here is that I helped them out. They helped me out. There wasn't this low-balling offer. I just found out their problems, and I tried to help them solve it. And that's the part of the process that began. We had identified the property at this time. And that's when Kim started to really get more interested. Is that correct?
I started getting very excited at that point. And Robert said, okay, now you take it from here. And this is where my education really began because never having done this before, my very first real estate deal, I had so many fears. I had so many doubts. I was so not confident of what I was doing. And I went back and forth with the seller. I did due diligence up one side and down another. I checked out the roof. I checked out the heating. I was so afraid of making a mistake. That what if a tenant moved out, or what if I made a mistake here and it cost us more money? And I went through this horrendous process to make sure that this was the deal.
And the reason I stepped aside at that point is because what happens to most investors is they lose the deal because their emotions get in their way. In other words, they lose sight that it's a good deal. And what they only can focus on is why the deal won't work. That's where most people chicken out. That's the reason even smart people chicken out at this time. It is that point of decision. And what you lose sight of is how great an investment it is. And instead of seeing the upside, all you see is the downside. And Kim and I have learned this over years. Is, you bring an attorney in on the negotiation and all that. And all the attorney focuses on is why it won't work. And I also find not just with attorneys, I find out most unsuccessful investors, the reason they're unsuccessful is they can tell you why a good investment will not work. They lose sight of the objective. Warren Buffett, America's greatest stock investor, says this. He says, I took a Dale Carnegie course because his knees were shaking every time he spoke. He says, I took the course not to stop my knees from shaking. I took the course so that I could speak while my knees were shaking. And I think that was one of the most important make or break points for Kim's career as an investor. I just watched her and I saw her go through all these doubts and all the reasons this deal would not work. I wanted to find out, did she have the courage, in spite of the fact that her knees are knocking, to go forward? Most unsuccessful people lose it at this moment. Anybody can identify a property. Anybody can write an offer. But the moment you go hard on the money, that means you put money down. And all it was about $5,000, right?
That's right. And you talk about the first step of the process, decide to be an investor. There comes a point, and there came a point for me in this deal where I got so tired of looking at every single detail of this property that there came a point where I said, either I'm going to do this deal or I'm not going to do this deal, and I need to decide to do this first deal.
And there was a lot of reasons why the deal wouldn't work, because this was the worst recession in Portland, Oregon's
Portland was
history.
in a depression.
Yeah, and it was bad, and everybody, there were for sale signs all over the place, and people, your family, your friends, your parents' friends were saying, "What are you doing?"
They all thought we were crazy. What are you doing investing in Portland? Don't you know the market's in the toilet and it's depressed? And why are you buying property up here?
And these are all people who are giving advice who are not investors. And the reason for that is their knees are shaking and their brains shake with it. They can't see the opportunity in the place. So the point here is this: you must get control of your emotions and be able to see the upside as well as the downside. There are people who lose because they only see the upside and they also fail to see the downside. So you got to see both of them. But the point I want to make here, no matter how many deals we do, our knees always shake. Is that correct?
They're always shaken. And the most important step, and for people out there who have not invested before, the most important step for me was putting the money down on that first deal. Doing that first deal made all the difference. We started with a small property. We started with a small down payment. And the fundamentals I learned on that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that cost $45,000, I still take with me today while we're working on the $6 million deal that we're negotiating on right now.
Right. We actually found this broker to help write the offer up. So he got a free deal. His name was Dave. And the trouble with Dave was he was a residential broker, not an investment broker. And I said, after we put this deal together, I said, "Hey, Dave, you got any more?" And he goes, "No, why do you want to buy another house? You already have 2. I mean, he could not understand that we wanted to buy another house. And that's when we found another guy named John who understood, and we bought, I think, 12 properties from John in a year or something, millions of dollars worth of property.
That's right.